Like BTS just depicted Howard University like this in the year of our Lord 1896, when there was no chance that a predominantly white institution would have let in 7 Korean men.
Why is everyone so shocked that BTS depicted Howard University as a predominantly white school? Yeah, we know Howard University is a HBCU, but are we forgetting that K-pop is literally what happens when you take black art and remove the black to make it more palatable? Are we forgetting that K-pop is just what happens when you want to sound like black people, but you're also racist? For decades, they've been excluding black people from K-pop, and you thought that was going to stop at an HBCU? No, but in all actuality, this is much sadder than you think it is. The Korean students that attended Howard University did so because they had nowhere else to go. While every other school in the nation maintained racial barriers, Howard University accepted them. Black people accepted them. They weren't serving the racial hierarchy, they were serving the pursuit of knowledge. Instead of just straight up honoring Howard University and the HBCU and black people that accepted them with open arms, they decided to make the very deliberate decision to depict Howard University as a predominantly white school.
I'm gonna be real with you. I'm not even a big fan of K-pop. Sometimes I do listen to BTS here and there. I know who they are. They are one of the biggest music groups in the world right now. But what just happened? This one right here? This is different. So BTS recently dropped a teaser. And in that video, they showed Howard University. But the problem is they depicted it as a predominantly white school. Now, if you know anything about Howard, you know that that is not just wrong. It ignores the history. Back in the late 1800s, during segregation, black people were locked out of white institutions. And Howard, as an HBCU, was one of the few places that opened doors, not just to black students, but even to Korean students when no one else would. So how do you take the same story and then erase the black presence in it? So what makes this even deeper is that K-pop itself is heavily influenced by black culture. We are talking about hip-hop, R&B, all of that. So now many black Americans and Asian Americans are asking, how do you benefit from black culture? But then turn around and whitewash black history. Right now, many black Americans and even Asian Americans are talking about this. And honestly, I think we need to hear from them. I will come back at the end and give you more insightful commentaries.
Okay, this is drawing the freaking line, and this needs to be said. So if you don't know, BTS had recently released like a trailer, an animation trailer, and it shows a scene where they're at Howard University. And as you can see, there's not many black people here, but white faces at a, let me remind you, historically black federal chartered university. It's a HBCU. This is a black college. And this is what they decided to do in this animation? Are you freaking kidding me? If you're a black army, you really need to say something about this because this is very offensive. And it's wrong. Like, I don't know what they were trying to accomplish here, but this is not it, baby. Fix it now. Like, I'm so dead serious. This is not okay. They are not going to just whitewash our stuff. That is, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. This is so disrespectful, and I am pissed. Like, no, I am not finna sit over here and let them do this. This is very offensive, and y'all better do something and say something about this because this is not fucking cool. I will not tolerate this at all. This is not okay.
A couple weeks ago, there was also that controversy where a K-pop group said the N-word and then claimed that they were saying neighbors instead. And all of this came on the heels of H-Mart Gate, where black people were encouraging us to gatekeep our culture and had basically stepped in to save Madeline from the 3 Korean content creators who were sending like a huge hate train her way for wanting to gatekeep our culture. I don't even know if it's K-pop at this point. I'm not Korean, but seriously, like Korean people, what is going on? There's a Korean content creator, I'm not gonna say who was arguing with Iranian people and calling them all Zionists because they disagreed with her take on Iran. And then because I kind of look like you, on a lot of my videos, black people are like, can you explain this Korean anti-black thing again? And I'm like, I'm not Korean. I'm not Korean, so I do my best, but why are you bringing the whole team down like this? And this is not all Korean people. I have Korean mutuals who are great, who I believe to be in solidarity with other minority people, with other Asians. But K-pop as an industry is being extremely racist toward Black people and dismissive of the ways that they've stood with Asian people, and not acknowledging that it is repackaged Black music, to the point where I, a Chinese person, have to answer for what you guys are doing. Like, I'm not gonna deny that there is white proximity and anti-Blackness in every single Asian community, but because Koreans are so visible, white people fetishize y'all and you keep letting them do that, it has become my problem as a Chinese person to try and show that we are not all anti-Black and weird.
That's all K-pop is. Black art minus the Blackness, minus the Black people. You thought removing the Black people was gonna stop right here for this animation? No, they don't like us. They just wanna sound like us, look like us, act like us, dress like us, and so on and so forth. K-pop thrived and grew to what it is today because there's a market for Black art minus the Black people. And as long as that market exists, we're going to keep running into situations like this. Don't say I didn't warn you.
So let me give you some historical context of how these 7 teenage boys ended up at Howard University, a legacy HBCU. So these were teenage boys who were from noble families, okay? They were very privileged. They stole money and they escaped Korea. They somehow ended up in Vancouver and through their connections found another exiled Korean man living in DC. Now at the time, Korea was going through its own problems. It's going through its own shit, right? This is 1896. Russia wanted Korea, China wanted Korea, and of course Japan, because when did Japan not want Korea? Am I right? Because of separate but equal, the only school that would accept these 7 Korean students was Howard University. The only problem was that they didn't speak a lick of English. They enroll in Howard University. Fast forward to the summer, this lady, Ann Fletcher, I don't know how she gets into the picture. Like, I don't know if she was a staff member at Howard University, but she invites 3 of the students into her home in DC, and she records them singing Korean arirang, which is Korean folk song. And this is officially the first recording of arirang. And now you can find that recording at the Library of Congress in DC.
These students were criminals, by the way, allegedly. If you look up the news article in 1896, there is a reference to 6 students that had to flee Japan because they robbed a bank. So they fled to Vancouver, and they were all sons of noblemen, Korean noblemen, so they had access to connections. But more importantly, when they fled to Vancouver, allegedly they used all their money and they had to find a way to live. So they reached out to this man, Seo. At the time, he was the Korean envoy and minister plenipotentiary to the United States, and he sympathized with their story because he also fled the United States one time. He used his connections in Washington to enroll these students at Howard University, which is a historically Black university. And so the backlash for BTS, where they are displaying more white people instead of Black students, is offensive in my opinion, because if you're going to talk about history, you should display it accurately. At the time, non-white students were facing discrimination from other universities, and Howard began opening their doors. The introduction of the 7th member of this story is a bit blurry. There are some sites reference a photo that includes a Korean lady. Some people reference some other random 7th member, and it's unknown why. The story began with 6 members, and then it suddenly became 7 members. In the news article, it had created the story to indicate that they were running away from home to get a better education in America. They didn't speak English. It didn't mention the part where they had escaped their country because they had been accused of a crime. And then in terms of the recording of the arirang, which is the Korean folklore song, only 3 students were invited by a Howard professor to record that song. So it is, I don't know why they're crediting all 7 of them. Story is
Mind you, white people do not like HBCUs. They're constantly in America arguing the relevancy of HBCUs, inaccurately themselves. right? Because HBCUs only exist because black people were ostracized from white institutions and we wanted a place to get a higher education. Yep. So for you to depict Howard University as whitewashed in any capacity is disrespectful, especially when they were the only institution at that time that were allowing you on their campus. Okay? Deontay Kyle asked this question yesterday on his podcast. When are you going to let the whiteness go? Because that's what this was about. Not just history erasure, it was literally whiteness.
No hate to BTS because I don't want to be found dead tomorrow, but the only reason those 7 Korean students were allowed to record that recording you're paying homage to is because the historically black HBCU, Howard University, and the black folks there allowed you on the premises. In an era where you weren't allowed in those white institutions, the black people accepted you and said, hey, yeah, record everything. And that recording is still in the archive there. And yet you depict Howard as a mainly white university? In what world? You have Google. Just search it up. It's
Long before Brown versus Board of Ed integrated the education system, Korean international students ended up at Howard University. Why? Because PWIs at the time wouldn't let them in. And why did Howard University exist in the first place? Because without HBCUs, black students wouldn't have had anywhere to get educated. The white schools didn't let them in. So why include white people in a historical episode that doesn't have much to do with them but was caused by their racism? It's the pick-me-goism. This is for the white gays. It's erasing black history, Asian history, and this one moment of solidarity between minorities in favor of making white people feel good about themselves, that they were part of this story at all. Now, I know BTS is Korean, but they knew better. They've been an internationally famous group for such a long time. Before making a music video about Howard University, they could have Googled Howard University. Even better, they could have visited Howard University. I went there one time in 2018 to visit my friend who was in medical school at the time. I met like one Asian girl, but my friend and everybody else was black. Even though the school has been integrated and anybody can go there now, it is an overwhelmingly black school. So this portrayal with this many white people standing in front of the black people is inaccurate today, and it was extremely inaccurate.
Recently, BTS decided to pander to its white audience while telling a story about black and Asian struggle, which was literally a result of white racism. The group released a 1-minute video for the song Arirang, which is one of the most well-known songs in Korea. So the group starts with the 7 BTS members and then shifts to 1896, where 7 Korean students are shown recording Arirang. However, the crowd is primarily white with black people in the background, which is just completely historically inaccurate. 7 Korean students were actually there in 1896, but the reason that they were there is because they were not allowed to go to PWIs. Neither were black people. That's why Howard was funded. It stayed that way until 1954 with the Brown versus Board ruling, which stated that children, no matter their race background, could go to the same school. At the time, there would not have been white people. In fact, they wouldn't have even wanted to be there. We see this all the time with the popularizing of different cultures and histories. There's this need to appease white people and pander to them, reducing the white guilt that they feel. Overall, I think that this is just really disappointing, and I hope that they get a chance to reshoot the video or make some type of public statement addressing it, because this is just ridiculous.
Okay, so this is where, as a diaspora Korean who was born and raised in New York, I grew up with 90s hip hop. This is where I felt like, oh, this was such a huge opportunity that they sort of missed the mark on, because how can you, as a K-pop group, which is black music, okay? Like, K-pop is black music, just repackaged as Korean. Like, how could you not actually do more research into the historical context of the time when Arirang was recorded and giving like the necessary respect and reverence of black culture that is due? Like, it's due. And I know that Koreans are going to come after me because they always do. They're so defensive about this. It's like, we can give respect to where our music comes from and also divest from whiteness. Like, it's actually not that hard, you know?
The animation featured 7 Korean men performing at Howard University, a predominantly black college, and the majority of the audience is not black. The black community is severely underaccredited when it comes to K-pop. K-pop has so many black origins or influences, from the dance techniques, music styles, even fashion. But we still see so much cultural appropriation and sensitivity. There's double standards, and I do think some of it truly is malice, but a lot of it's just ignorance. And to grow from ignorance, you own up to your mistakes, you apologize, and you do better.
To some outsiders, it seems like a small innocuous thing, like, oh, why are you giving them such a hard time? They fundamentally misrepresented an instance where Black people really helped us out. By us, I mean Asians. I'm not Korean. And then we wonder why they don't trust us, even as K-pop continues to take from their culture without credit. I hope they can remake this music video, because this was their chance to pull a Ryan Coogler, like what he did with Sinner, in which he told a Black story with Asian people in it, representing our historical relationship correctly and with respect. BTS had the chance to do the inverse, telling an Asian story that included a primarily Black setting and Black goodwill toward us, and instead we got white students standing in front of Black.
So, for me, when I saw it, I understood the backlash, but I also was curious, because I had never, quite frankly, I never heard of the story. I never knew of these Korean people who had enrolled at Howard University. I didn't know much about it, so I was just curious. And honestly, I think that's the only perspective that you need to have when you hear these types of stories. It's to understand why. I see a lot of backlash from people who are just saying, well, it's just K-pop, it's just BTS. But for me, it's like, they didn't even have to make this at all. I feel like if you're gonna do something, do it right.
So yeah, at surface level, I really doubt HYBE intentionally drew a predominantly white audience, okay, at Howard University in this animation trailer, but it is one example of numerous that I can name when it comes to Black racism in K-pop. Now notice how I said that they didn't mean to, it's likely just ignorance, right? And this is obviously no fault of the boys. You guys should still like BTS and stream Arirang. But I feel like it wouldn't be that difficult for HYBE to take down the video, edit the audience to be predominantly Black, and then re-upload it. With an apology, of course. Also, do not come for me about this warning they put at the beginning of the video that might not be historically accurate. They're obviously referring to the fact that this story stems from something back from 1896 and that we weren't there to record it on our iPhones. It is common sense that you should make the attendees of a historically Black college Black. And before you tell me that Korea isn't ethically diverse in their knowledge of racism, isn't as broad as Americans, sure. But we're talking about HYBE. This is for a video for BTS, a global group. They knew they were going to get non-Korean viewers. That's why that whole disclaimer was in English. I think it was oversight, the damage has been done, but I do think an apology wouldn't hurt, and I really hope you can see my point of view.
BTS just highlighted a centuries-old connection between Korean culture and Black culture in their new album teaser. If you didn't know, BTS is releasing a new album on March 20th, and it's a huge comeback for the group because it's their first release since all the members completed their mandatory military enlistment. The album's title is Arirang, which refers to the traditional Korean folk song of the same name. But as BTS highlights in this new teaser video, the African American institution played a major role in the preservation of this Korean folk tradition. The video tells the story of the first ever recording of the Arirang folk song, which took place in 1896 by a group of Korean students, not in Seoul, but in Washington, D.C., at Howard University, which is one of the top HBCUs, or historically Black colleges and universities, and a place very near and dear to my heart as the alma mater of both of my parents. There's even a Washington Post article from May 8th, 1896 that reads, 7 Koreans at Howard ran away from home to be educated in the United States. According to the article, the Korean minister in Washington, D.C. personally made the request to Howard University to enroll these 7 students. While most other universities at the time still had strict segregation rules, HBCUs were founded to provide educational access to African Americans, but at the same time, they operated under non-discriminatory values, so they were open to all students regardless of race. While they were studying at Howard, 3 of the students were invited by an American researcher to make a recording of the song, and that recording is actually still preserved today in the US Library of Congress. And it's really interesting to see how BTS has drawn these parallels. I mean, there were 7 Korean students that came to study at Howard. BTS has 7 members, and BTS apparently recorded their new album in the US, just like how these students recorded the Arirang folk song over a century ago. And even in the BTS teaser video, they show the Howard campus and the iconic yard. Do wish there were a few more black people in the crowd, but you know, maybe I can only expect so much. I do think it's pretty cool that they chose to spotlight this piece of history, and I'm curious to see if it'll show up on any other parts of the album.
In my opinion, you can't do a reimagining of history if the reimagining does not deepen our understanding of that history. I had time, so I paused that BTS video, and they show 58 people in that crowd scene, or in the 2 crowd scene, and there are only 14 black people shown at Howard University in 1896. And then they put out Swim, which if you look at the credits, it's 5 white men that are credited first. And then you watch the video, and it's probably 50% Betty from Riverdale. And so to me, that further disconnects both from the black community, which accepted those 6 original Korean boys in 1896 in the first place, but also distances from this concept of arirang, that they say they're going back to their Korean cultural roots. Now, I know K-pop inside and out. I've been to 2 BTS concerts, which changed my life. But when BTS says something like, we're going to return to our roots, we're going to uplift Korean culture and sound, to me that sounds like Dejita, that sounds like Pepse, that sounds like Dang, that even sounds like my city uplifted all the different cities that the boys were from. Like there was so much pride in being Korean. Like to hear Suga rap in his native accent, like that to me feels like a deep connection. And if you're not going to connect to Koreanness, then uplift the community that you're always taking, at least, at the very least, inspiration, but at most, fully appropriating from. Like, it's at least a bummer and at most, like, pretty egregious that there's, like, always 5 white names before your own names on your own album. So to me, it is, like, a miss on 3 sides. It's a miss on representing the people that you take from. It's a miss on representing one's own culture in a deep, meaningful way, which I'm, like, yes, they have that palette cleanser before Swim, but looking for, like, the lyrical content, like the orchestration, the production. And it's a miss because it's like, these are Ryan Tedder and Diplo's songs that these are their B-sides from 2019. I think the difficulty is that, like, I loved BTS so much. Like, they genuinely changed my life from, like, 2016 to 2020. And to kind of see them lose this kind of, you know, they used to speak out against the Korean government. They used to speak out against nepotism, against lookism, against so many things. Like, they used to pay so much homage to Black culture and learn from their mistakes. And it just feels like that group maybe, like, isn't there anymore. And it just makes me feel this, like, deep sense of loss. Yeah, it's just a bummer. It's a bummer to me.
BTS is one of the most popular boy groups, men groups, is that what you call them? Because they're not boys anymore, in the world. And we're never gonna get to repair between our communities if us as Koreans and all East Asians and all Asians give up our proximity to whiteness. If we don't start repairing and building trust with each other, and that starts with calling these things out within our own community.
God! My frustration comes from a place of solidarity. Look at the Oscars. Sinners depicted Chinese culture in such a masterful way. There are ways where Black people and Asians can show solidarity to each other in an accurate way and in a loving way. But then, the way we've allowed white mediocrity to slide for so many years, we cannot let ignorance overseas slide either. Oh, but they don't know any better. Stop acting like that. These are smart, grown men. These are businessmen at the end of the day. They know what they're doing. These are not your ooh little soft idol babies. Like, no, these are grown men who are more than capable of doing a Google search when they're trying to pay historical homage to anything. You should want to be accurate. And so depicting Howard University as a mainly white institution, in what world?
Now, I'm not a big BTS fan. I know a couple songs here and there, but what I am is Black and tired. I'm seeing people gaslight my favorite creators, making them feel crazy, saying, oh, this isn't serious. Well, to say that this isn't serious, you recognize how serious it is to that one person. But if you were able to stand back and see other people talk about how serious it is, wouldn't you fucking think? Now, are there also Black people and Korean people that are saying that this is also not an issue? Yes, but at the end of the day, we are all people of color, and I don't believe in infighting because the real enemy is white supremacy. Now, in the sea of think pieces, I'm not going to do too much. You can go and actually find out why this is an issue on a historical level. But what I will say is this is my main irritation about multiculturalism without empathy, or AKA colorblindness. It's so interesting to me that we can talk about propaganda, good or bad, so easily. But whenever we're talking about Blackness and Black history and how it is erased in a specific historical moment, whether it be conscious or unconscious, that's hard. So first and foremost, people were never even taught about the situation. People were never taught about the Koreans who came to Howard University and HBCU. You know what else they never were taught about? Howard University and HBCU. So on top of already low empathy levels, we are also adding the parasocial mess of my faith could do no wrong. OMG, Black people, leaving out Black people. Didn't you see Jungkook dance next to a Black person and smile at him? Ooh, that triggered me. Korean American history and Black American history is American history. If you do any type of thing that erases the Black history, you are now erasing Korean American history, and you are on top of that erasing American history in general. It's just that. Ended off on a positive note. I really implore people to look at Black, Hispanic, and Asian history throughout the 20th century, and not only looking at them as a separate entity and the things that they did for each community, but also looking at the coalitions, the beautiful coalitions that they had built in the name of civil rights, and also the coalitions that they had built in the name of each other's movements. It's actually quite beautiful. So when you're taking small things, or what you consider as small, it is still removing pieces of history. There are things so small in other pieces of history, in European history, and at all them histories, right? That we acknowledge those really small things. We know so many minute things of World War II, but when we're trying to say, hey, you are erasing the Blackness from Howard University, which is an HBCU, a historical Black college and university, why can't we acknowledge that's minuteness? And you can talk about the shell casings in World War II and say why that's important to the death count. Please, we're a unit.
Are grown men who are more than capable of doing a Google search when they're trying to pay historical homage to anything. You should want to be accurate. And so depicting Howard University as a mainly white institution, in what world?
To some outsiders, it seems like a small innocuous thing, like, oh, why are you giving them such a hard time? They fundamentally misrepresented an instance where Black people really helped us out. By us, I mean Asians. I'm not Korean. And then we wonder why they don't trust us, even as K-pop continues to take from their culture without credit. I hope they can remake this music video, because this was their chance to pull a Ryan Coogler, like what he did with Sinner, in which he told a Black story with Asian people in it, representing our historical relationship correctly and with respect. BTS had the chance to do the inverse, telling an Asian story that included a primarily Black setting and Black goodwill toward us, and instead we got white students standing in front of Black.
We see this all the time with the popularizing of different cultures and histories. There's this need to appease white people and pander to them, reducing the white guilt that they feel. Overall, I think that this is just really disappointing, and I hope that they get a chance to reshoot the video or make some type of public statement addressing it, because this is just ridiculous.
There are likely people alive today, well over 100 years old, who were alive when Koreans still looked like this. Yet when you go to Korea today, here's what you see: a much lighter-skinned population. So, was there ethnic cleansing? Forced migration? Worse? We're not the first to ask. During the Joseon dynasty, dark-skinned Koreans held elite positions in society. They were known as the Yangban, the scholar class. These men were public officials, Confucian intellectuals, lawmakers, artists, poets. According to art historian Soyoung Lee, Yangban were expected to cultivate morality through study and hold public office. Many were accomplished artists, mastering calligraphy and ink painting. They weren't just cultural icons. They were also pioneers in science and technology, inventing the clepsydra, water clock, sundials, the rain gauge, the first of its kind in the world. They also compiled Korea's unique legal codes and were key to its administration. Here are indigenous people of Thailand. Here, the Philippines. These are the original Asians, Africoid peoples. We've searched and searched, and all we've found is silence, as if these people never existed. So what happened to them? Where did they vanish to? These are not myths, paintings, or carvings. These are real photographs. Cold, hard, undeniable evidence. Human beings, people, our people, It's as if a giant hand reached down from the sky, erased them, and whispered to history, "Forget." But we do not forget. We are the memory keepers. We are the re-rememberers. And we will keep asking, where did they go? These faces carved in silver light. These children of two worlds, stamped in time, then swept from sight. No plaques, no pages, no public cries, just whispers lost beneath Korean skies.
Alright guys, now that you have already watched those clips, let's start by talking about Howard University. This is not just any school. Howard is what we call an HBCU, historically black college and university. These institutions did not just appear randomly. They were created out of necessity. After slavery ended in 1865, black Americans were technically free, but in reality, they were still locked out of education. Most white institutions simply refused to admit black students. That is the kind of environment we are talking about. So what did black communities do? They built their own institutions. Schools like Howard, founded in 1867, were created so that a black student could have access to higher education when white America shut the door on them. Now, here is where it becomes very important to this conversation. In the late 1800s, during the time BTS is referencing, around 1896, the United States was deep in segregation. That same year, the Supreme Court passed a decision in Plessy v. Ferguson, which legalized racial segregation under the idea separate but equal. So let's be clear, white institutions were not welcoming black people. And they were definitely not welcoming other non-white groups either. So when those Korean students come to the US, they didn't just randomly choose Howard. They ended up there because they had nowhere else to go. Predominantly white school would not accept them. And Howard, being an HBCU, operated differently. It wasn't built on exclusion, it was built on access. That is why they were allowed in. That right there is the heart of this entire issue. Because what DPS tried to depict was a historical moment where black people, through black institutions like Howard, created space not just for themselves, but for others who were also excluded. That is a powerful moment for black and Asian connection in the history. But when you take that moment and then turns it into something that looks predominantly white, you are not just making a small mistake. You are changing the true meaning of the story. You are removing the very people who made that moment possible. And that is why many black Americans and many Asian Americans are upset. Now, let's take it a step further, because a lot of people in those clips were also talking about K-pop itself. And this is something that has been discussed for many years, and I've made a bunch of videos about this topic. K-pop as a genre is heavily influenced by black American culture. We are talking about hip-hop, R&B, dance styles, fashion. All of that has deep roots in black communities. So the frustration becomes this: how do you build a global industry of black cultural influence, but then fail to properly acknowledge or represent black people, especially in a story where black people helped you? And if we are being honest, this is not the first time conversations like this come up. Over the years, there have been instances where Asian artists or media spaces have been accused of borrowing from black culture, while also showing insensitivity to black people, whether it is the use of certain hairstyles, language, or even music styles without context. Yes, these conversations have been there, but here is where I think that we also need to be balanced. Not every situation is coming from pure hate. Some of it is ignorance. Some of it is lack of historical understanding. But the problem is, ignorance still has consequences, especially when you are a global group like BTS with millions of fans around the world. At that level, you don't really have the luxury of not knowing, because your works reach the people who do know the history. And when they see it misrepresented, it hits different. Another very important thing that came up in those clips is the proximity to whiteness, mostly the proximity of Asian Americans or Asians in general to white people. This is something that has been discussed in both Asian and Black communities. The idea is that in some cases, being closer to whiteness, whether culturally or socially, can be seen as beneficial. And sometimes that leads to situations where blacks get minimized or pushed to the background. That is a sensitive topic, but it is a part of what we are discussing here. Because when you take a black institution and then center whiteness visually, that sends a message, whether intentional or not. But at the same time, I don't think this should turn into a division between black communities and Asian communities. Because if you really look at the history, there have also been moments of solidarity. Black civil rights movement have inspired movements across different communities. Asian American activists have stood alongside Black American activists in different periods, especially during the 1960s and beyond. There is a shared history of being marginalized, of being excluded, of fighting for recognition. And even in this specific story, we are talking about moments where Howard University opened doors for those Asian students. That should be something that brings people together, not divides them. So, brothers and sisters, Black Americans, Asian Americans watching me right now, what should be the takeaway from this whole video? If you are going to tell a story that involves history, that is rooted in struggle, exclusion, and survival, you have to respect the truth of that story. You have to represent the people who were actually there, because those details are not small as you think. And for BTS, this could have been actually a powerful moment. They had an opportunity to highlight the historical connection between Korea and Black America. They could have shown how Black institutions played a role in preserving a piece of Korean culture, and it would excite many of their fans, especially those who are in America. But instead, what people saw, what they have shown, was something that felt disconnected from the truth. Whether this gets corrected or not, that is up to them. But one thing is clear. People are paying attention. People understand the history. And conversations like this are not going away. At the end of the day, I think it is very important to do two things at the same time. Call out what is wrong clearly, respectfully, and with facts. But also leave room for understanding, growth, and real solidarity. Our goals should not be to criticize. The goal should be to get it right and to move forward better. So that is it for today. Let me know what you think down there in the comment section. And please, if you have enjoyed watching this episode, I want you to click on the like button and also subscribe for the upcoming episodes. Mr. TA signing off. Peace and love. Ciao.